Getting into a long-running media is never an easy thing. I mean, how many times have you ever had your friends try so hard to make you play their favorite video game or watch their favorite show? I understand that sentiment because when you manage to make someone love something you really like, it's honestly pretty amazing. However, there are some complications to that. Individual tastes, media where you don't know where the fuck to start, or in this case, a series that is so long that its length is capable of pushing newcomers away. One Piece is perhaps the true embodiment of that last statement. A shonen manga created by Eiichiro Oda, whose biggest claim of infamy is due to how long it is. Over 1,000 chapters! And last time I checked... yeah, that's a lot. It's one of those shows whose existence I have known since I have memory. But back in the day it wasn't so easy getting into it. Mexican Cartoon Network and Canal 5 will always fuck up the airing, so it was next to impossible to know when the anime will be on TV. Added to the fact that manga wasn't as accessible as it is today in the country. But when the time came where I had a decent internet and my weeaboo phase began in middle school, I found out that One Piece was in fact much bigger than I anticipated. So instead of trying to give it a shot, I decided to waste all that free time watching whatever generic piece of shit I could find. Except Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I fucking adore that one. My main drive to start this adventure was quite simple. As I grew older, I surrounded myself with all kinds of wonderful people, with lots of them just happening to be huge One Piece fans, and that became a gateway. Because you can tell when a person carries genuine love and passion for something. That sentiment towards One Piece was more than evident, which, at the very least, got me a little bit curious. It took me a few years, but once I finally gave it a chance, it pretty much went like this. One Piece is a manga that achieves so many things. It hooked me, it surprised me, and it made me fall in love with it. So what I'm aiming for with this video is to explain how that happened and maybe convince new people to get into the series. Also, I'm talking from an anime perspective. Yada yada yada, read the manga, guess what? It took me 3 years to read 9 volumes of Pokémon Adventures Black and White. Will you trust me to keep a decent pace with one of the longest mangas in existence? The first thing that caught my attention about One Piece was how much energy there is behind it. Right off the bat, you have the main character Luffy stabbing himself in the eye to prove his worth to other pirates. It was a scene that gave me an amazing first impression because yeah, it's so fucking funny! Luffy's backstory was actually my first exposure I had to the anime, thanks to that movie that sums up the first saga. I was told later that I should have just watched the episodes normally, and I can agree with that, since some important details are completely ignored in the movie. But I can still give it credit because it gave me a taste of what One Piece was all about. A story that has an interesting premise, character motivations that are tied to the main plot and make you root for them, comedy that delivers itself at just the right moment, and action that keeps you on the edge of your seat. And that's just the first saga! Little did I know that was only a small portion of it, because the more I watch, the more surprised I will be. Not only were the stakes rising every arc, but the scope increased every time. which ultimately hit me with the realization of how connected and diverse the world of One Piece is. You have your islands with different settings, from sand kingdoms, lands in the sky, underwater countries, and places that defy all common sense. More than just adding variety to the mix, this helps to accentuate the feeling of adventure. When I start a new arc, I'm not just excited to see more fights. I want to know how different the new setting will be. Seeing what places the Straw Hat Pirates will find is on its own a joy. There's enough time and exposition to ensure that the viewer will have a general idea of how different every island is. The end result being a world that feels alive, brimming with so much cultural diversity that keeps things fresh. But there's also the added bonus of how connected it is, which is a feeling that never stops growing. Nothing else encapsulates this better than the moment where Luffy and his crew arrived to the Grand Line, because that was the point where One Piece stopped being just a very enjoyable anime. It became something more than that. From that moment onwards, everything divides itself in multiple adventures. Some of them may seem unnecessary on the surface, and others are their own self-contained story. Regardless, they are still very enjoyable. But it wasn't until the final conclusion in the Kingdom of Alabasta where I realized how all those detours, those characters that were met through the journey, those little details that were occasionally mentioned, all of them served a purpose. Alabasta is an arc that holds so much meaning for me, because the build-up towards it delivered a conclusion that made me scream from the top of my lungs, and made me realize how massive the scope of the world in One Piece was. If for one moment I thought that was the end of it all, I was completely mistaken, because Alabasta was actually just a small slice of a whole cake. One Piece will just continue to increase in size and impress me even more with how much thought and planning there was behind it. And that's something I have so much respect for. The way in which these events intertwine isn't just a silly excuse for, oh hey, remember this goofy character at the beginning of the anime that was kicking the balls? There he is! Laugh now! There is a rhyme and reason to everything that happens, and One Piece absolutely knocks it out of the park when it comes to that. The story is fantastic because the world itself makes it so. But you know what else makes the world that good? The characters! I absolutely love them. What I find so appealing on a surface level is how unique the designs are. It's a minor thing, but one that never stops being so attractive to me. Oda absolutely nails it in making his designs tell the viewer what they can expect from the character in question. If the villain is more comical, then he will have a punchable face with exaggerated features. If the villain is ruthless, they will convey that through a menacing and imposing design. If the story wants you to acknowledge the greatness of a character, their design can single-handedly do that job. This aspect also applies to minor characters, which is extremely useful. I have a hard time remembering names, but their designs, along with quirky speech patterns, have helped me to remember their existence. What's the name of this guy? I forgot, but I can clearly recall his scenes because of his kabuki motive and saying "Yo-yoi! Yo-yoi!" all the time. That level of care and love for the characters, even with the most inconsequential ones, is something that spreads through all of One Piece. But if you wanna dive deeper into it, let's analyze what makes them so enjoyable. I'll use the Straw Hat Pirates as an example. First, you have the relationship. It's one of those that is so organic because they have realistic dynamics. Sometimes you see them disagree, fight, and even go their own separate ways. But later they will still come back to support one another. This is believable because lots of screen time is given to the viewer to understand how much these guys genuinely care for one another. More than a pirate crew, they're a family. The other reason as to why I find them so endearing is because they have a true sense of individuality. They're all there to support Luffy on his dream to become the king of pirates, but not to the point of becoming glorified cheerleaders. They also have motivations and dreams of their own. On top of that, there's also the way in which One Piece highlights their importance. Every member is absolutely crucial. For example, without Nami, they'd be lost since she's the only navigator. Without Sanji, they'd starve to death. I've lost account of how many times I've said, damn, if this specific character hadn't been in this specific situation, then that would have been the end of it. But more than just everyone doing their job, I think the best part about them is that they are capable of carrying the story themselves. Take for example Dragon Ball Z. I love that anime because my blood dictates so, but seriously, how many times do most fights involving not Goku boil down to let's hold them off until Goku arrives?
Sex song!
With One Piece that is rarely the case. The Straw Hats are not just there to make Luffy look better. If the latter is out of commission, the crew will ensure that the situation at hand will never get dull. In fact, some of my favorite fights in the series don't involve Luffy in the slightest. Usopp and Chopper vs Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas. Usopp vs Perona. The Straw Hats vs Oars. The Zoro sword fights. Those are just small examples of events that had me screaming from the top of my lungs with excitement and didn't even need to have Luffy on screen. And remember, these are just the Straw Hats I'm talking about. The supporting characters also add so much to the story and world building. I can go as far as to say that even they are capable of taking the spotlight. And the villains don't fall behind either, because they can become a definitive factor of what makes an arc so memorable. This goes back to my point of how One Piece is in a state of permanent growth. The major villains have so much build-up behind them. What truly sells them is how they don't just exist as an obstacle for Luffy, because throughout the development of the anime, you are filled in on their backstories and motives, or at the very least, given an idea that they're up to something bigger in the future. Right now, at the time of this video, I find myself in the Dressrosa arc. And I'm so beyond excited for what's to come, because the main villain, Don Quixote do Flamingo, also known as Don Pitote Domingo in Spanish, has kept my attention since the moment he was first introduced so many sagas ago. I want to learn more about him, and I shiver with anticipation of what he has up his sleeve. Even smaller villains are worth a mention, because for as little build-up as they may have behind them, they can still serve a big purpose, to add tension to the situation at hand, or contribute more towards future events. The fight scenes are nothing short of epic. Their selling point is that they carefully take into account the characters' unique traits and powers. Even if a new technique is revealed, you rarely get the feeling of an asshole. We are shown enough to understand what the characters are capable of. and thus it makes perfect sense as to why they will be able to do what they do. A thing I really like about the fights is how varied they can be. Like, devil fruits are a major thing in One Piece, but not everyone has to have one to make the battle satisfying. With how much they mix up the mechanics, I just never know what to expect. Sometimes I can get a battle of tactical metal, other times a team-up, or my personal favorite, this is what we refer to in Spanish as chingadazo, which literally translates to So far I have talked about all the things that make One Piece good. Too good to be true, honestly. But what can I say? Any complaints I have are just little nitpicks. So there's two I wanna talk about. The first is just annoying at worst. The comedy in One Piece is fucking outstanding. It comes at the right time, it never breaks the immersion, and it's so in your face it's hard not to laugh. But you still have one or two jokes that are beaten into the ground. Sanji at Fishman Island. That was the only time I ever said, please, just stop. The other nitpick I have is very common to anime in general. One Piece is one of those series where you can have a character be shot in the chest 5 times, get their limbs torn apart, and they'll be like,
"'Tis but a scratch." A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't.
I can understand Oda for not daring to kill the charismatic characters he creates. But there are times that have me like, come on, that's plot armor and you know it. My friends once told me, in One Piece nobody dies except when they do. And I clearly understand what they meant by that. This is my favorite example, and a small spoiler, so be wary of it. There's a part where a nuke is about to destroy an entire city. So this guy uses his Falcon powers to carry it to the sky, with the bomb exploding while he is carrying it. That was very iconic, and the scene that follows that broke me up emotionally. But then he returns at the end of the arc safe and sound and says so mortified, "This is my grave? Oh, I'm sorry. I hope you're not mad because people thought you died for having a fucking nuke blown into your face." As you saw, nothing but little nitpicks. It's hard to notice glaring flaws because One Piece has so much love, quality, and planning behind it. This is an anime I never thought would captivate me the way it did. One thing is true, One Piece is extremely demanding to the average person. Over 1,000 manga chapters is asking for too much, but its substance does more than enough to justify it. For those who want to give it a shot, I can tell you, if you ever start One Piece, you'll get a breathing world full of details that reward you for paying attention. Incredible writing that keeps your full interest. Believable characters that are hard not to love. Memorable fights that keep you on the edge of your seat. And so much more. Seriously, just ignore the unfunny people who repeat the same joke. Dude, don't watch One Piece, it sucks, it gets good after episode 5937. I can tell you, that is bullshit. You want to know what's my absolutely favorite part about it? This is an anime that always makes me feel something. No matter the arc, no matter the episode, I'm always getting something out of it. I can be intrigued at the build-up of certain story elements, impressed at the revelations of set events. I can be losing my mind during impressive fights, get anxious on tense parts, laugh really hard at the jokes, or bawl my eyes out at how genuinely moving some scenes can be. Like, no shit! I cried while listening to an opening for the first time. That has never happened to me before. But that's just an example of how touching One Piece can be. This has truly been a unique adventure that has left a mark on me, and I don't regret starting it in the slightest. Although, I am curious about something. Am I a hypocrite for ignoring my friends who have been telling me for years to watch Evangelion, with my excuse being, I don't have time, but here I am watching One Piece? I think not.
Sí sos.
Me descubriste.